Hey, what's up? It's Kat Jenna, and today I wanted to talk about my experience at residential treatment in Tennessee at the ranch. Little disclaimer, I'm not trying to talk shit on the ranch. I just want to share my experience, and this is not coming out of a place of anger. This is genuinely my experience. It has been it's been like a year and a half since I got discharged from there. It's not the last residential program I've been to. Um, Circumstances under which I went to the ranch, my mental health was terrible. I was kind of covering my mental health by being treated for drug addiction, which drug addiction, yes, is a part of mental health, but when I refer to mental health, I'm referring to PTSD, depression, and my borderline personality disorder. Um, I went there primarily for mental health, and I was transferred there because the facility I was at previously for mental health didn't like that I also had a drug history, and they had recently had an incident with drug use at their facility, and they just weren't willing to take that risk, and they're like, oh, you need someone that can deal with substance as well, and I don't know, that's another story. But yeah, got to the ranch. When you go to the ranch, they admit you through like what's considered like their medical hospital building, where it's a little more locked down, and this is the time in which they really assess you. I kind of think that's actually really appropriate, though. I like the way they did that. It allows them to A, know which house you need to go to, and B, know if this is appropriate for you or if you need to go to an inpatient level of care. Also allows some people to detox with close medical supervision. However, those few days you're at what they call Piney, you're not receiving a lot of treatment. It is groups run by people who didn't really seem to know what they were talking about, and it was kind of more like stuff to keep you busy rather than stuff to help you. I get it; they're admitting people, but it did feel a little counterproductive. And Penny was also like, it was in a very, very high quality building. No, I'm not like, I need like red carpets rolled out for me and shit. No, it just felt a little gross, a little rundown. Anyways, yeah, so they admitted me from Piney to one of the houses. I got put in a house that was primarily for drug and alcohol use, which was fine. Most of the people there had other underlying mental health conditions, and treatment did not focus completely around substance use. It was the biggest house, and again, you run into issues there. Especially because their whole program for like how they feed you, you cook your own meals, which is nice for someone who likes to cook, but it's also dinners are made like as like a family. That's messy. Um that's like people trying to cook for an entire household, and honestly I don't know how they don't get away with any like food code violations with that, because there were circumstances in which things were undercooked. I remember there was bloody chicken one night, like but it was nice for me because I'm a person that likes to cook, and I was able to like, make my own food to my own preferences, and They never got really mad at us if we wanted like to eat something different than what was being made. And I on multiple occasions like would cook as much as I could for the entire house. I consider myself a relatively good cook, and it was just enjoyable for me. That being said, yeah, we had dinner with about 20 women at one table. Went around, kind of talked about our highs and lows of the day. I think we said was something we were grateful for. Stuff like that. The actual treatment part of it, well, no, I'll go into more about the house. There were all these sorts of rooms, and they had girls that were doing partial hospitalization program while still living there. That's kind of an insurance purposes thing. In the upstairs of the house, and then downstairs they had 4 bedrooms with 3 girls, or no, I think there were 5 bedrooms with 3 girls each in them. Yeah, because there was like one other bedroom, and each bedroom had like their own bathroom and shower, everything like that. And at night, like you're only allowed in your rooms pretty much when you're going to sleep. And so I, for the first 2 weeks, was considered under residential, and then insurance denied me to stay there any longer, but my treatment team was like, no, you need to stay here longer. So then I started doing their partial hospitalization program, and due to insurance purposes, I couldn't be in the same rooms as the girls doing residential. So they moved me to, they gave me a choice. There are bedrooms upstairs with 2 girls in each room, or there were these 2 bedrooms right by the front entrance of the house where they were single rooms. And I was like, oh hell yeah, I'm gonna go in a room by myself, because like I clash with girls a lot, you know. So when I was working with a residential therapist, I hated her. I thought she was such a mean and uncompassionate person. I was spilling all my traumas to her on the table, and she was mean. I don't like her. I really did not like her. And it was like, well, that's your therapist. Like, you're stuck with them. And that's, yeah. A little bit about our day. We'd wake up and eat breakfast. Breakfast, you were kind of on your own. Like, you made what you wanted, and then you had to be at the table at a certain time. I think you had to be at the table by like 7, which a little early in my opinion, but that's just me. And you ate breakfast together, and then you went to your primary therapy group, which was like 3 hours. You took like a break in between, and that was with your primary therapist. There were way too many girls shoved in one therapist's office. And it just felt like a lot. With the therapist I had, it just felt like she was like just going around roasting people. Like, it was not therapeutic to me. And I know a lot of people felt the same way as me, and they give most people there like this trauma project to do, and then you have to present it in front of the entire group, and like that's like terrifying to me. Like, I'll tell you my traumas, but I'll tell you on my own time. Like, in a group setting like that, like that wasn't, I didn't vibe with that. But anyways, yeah, so they do a lot of trauma-based therapy. They do equine therapy, which research on equine therapy is amazing. Except here's the thing. They didn't do the equine therapy that was promised. And they, a lot of the times, they like mention like doing like riding horses and stuff, and you could sign up to do that, and you sign up but you never actually get to do it. But the few times that I actually did get to go and be with the horses was really nice. I'm not a person that really enjoys horses that much, but horses like mimic human emotion, and so you can like tell a horse your story without saying anything, and like you can get that compassion and that empathy back just by looking at a horse. And I think that's beautiful, but they didn't do it as often as they should. Yeah, so the first 2 weeks I was in the residential program, they did on Fridays, I think, we had like an experiential therapy. Oh, I wish I remember that guy's name. The guy that did it was amazing. Those experiential therapies were like usually like team building groups, and at one point, everyone that goes to the ranch does this one specific day, and it's called like the maze. Here's the spoiler alert. If you don't want to know, skip to the end. But they do this thing called the maze, and it's a series of like ropes that are entangled, and they blindfold you. And you're walking around the maze, and they keep telling you like, raise your hand when you think you found the exit, or if you need help. And so, you keep raising your hand. You're like, I found the exit. They're like, no, you didn't. You're walking around in this maze, and you keep walking, and you're like, oh, I found it. No, you did it. And eventually, I caught on to what they were saying. They said, raise your hand if you think you found the exit, or if you need help. The whole point of this exercise was to raise your hand and ask for help. And that was really meaningful. And once you ask for help, they tell you you finished the maze quietly, and then bring you over to a group of girls that is waiting to read this paragraph to you, and they all embrace you, and they're like, you like did the thing that you need to do, is ask for help. And it's really beautiful. And like I cried when like they brought me over, and then the last person to finish reads it to the next girl, and that's beautiful. Experiential therapy, 10 out of 10. We did a lot of 12-step groups. You had options of going to different 12-step groups. They had Sex Addicts Anonymous, and a lot of girls didn't take it seriously, and that kind of pissed me off because I identify with like sex and love addiction, and it was a little annoying that they made everyone do it, because a lot of people don't realize that like it does actually mean something to someone, and that like sex isn't just like taboo or funny. Like for some of us it has a lot of emotion behind it, and some of us have problems with it, and that was a mess. But when I got to do it with the girls that specifically wanted to do it, is very beneficial. And of course there was like AA, NA, that kind of stuff. And then when I got transferred to PHP, I still did the same groups with the girls in the evening, like the 12-step meetings, and I still had dinner with them. But for insurance purposes, we had to be at a different building. A lot of the times it just felt like we were sitting around doing much of nothing. Did feel a little more freeing. And you'd have a therapist. Your primary therapist would do a lot of your groups with you, stuff like that. And I had a terrible primary therapist again. She, again, unsympathetic. She lied to me and then would lie to my parents about things I was saying, and it was a mess, and she didn't know how to discharge plan. Discharge planning should start the day you enter a facility, because you never know when insurance is gonna say, out of here. And so they ended up, like, the last couple of days I was there, They ended up switching around the therapist because I guess a lot of people were having this problem with her. And I ended up getting another therapist that was able to set up some discharge plans for me. I was going to go to sober living in California. And yeah. But a lot of it's just, groups and stuff. The concept is great. The execution is terrible. Not to mention, while I was there, and I know this is beyond their control, but the way they responded to it was not appropriate. There was a staff member on drugs, and there was only two staff members in the household in the evening, besides a nurse. And there was a staff member on drugs, believed to be methamphetamine, and had brought drugs to the facility. It was very obvious she was tweaking. We said something to one of the staff members, and she goes, "Oh, you think I don't know?" And it was like, and yeah, it wasn't handled well. She wasn't taken out of the facility that night, which she should have been immediately once someone had concerns about that. And a client actually ended up getting a hold of drugs she brought and used them, someone who has addiction issues. And the way they handled that, they were kind of very unsympathetic to the situation, and it's like, you brought drugs into a household of girls who have drug problems. Like, it's not appropriate, and it wasn't okay, and they weren't super apologetic about it. And honestly, when we started meeting with the head of the program, it has just turned into a roast. And it was counterproductive, and they pretty much targeted all of us, and they're like, they drug tested all of us. I understand for safety purposes, but it's also a little bit of bullshit that we were ever put in that situation. Overall, I would recommend the ranch for people who are at their last resort, and it's like they need somebody to hit them hard. I think this is the final residential step before you're like, fuck it, wilderness therapy. It's hard, and I was struggling with a lot of trauma at the time, and I don't think that was the appropriate approach for me. I don't think it's an inappropriate approach for everyone, but again, I wouldn't really recommend it. And that's just my experience, but I wanted to share my experience with that, maybe somebody considering going, and as always, if you guys have questions, leave them in the comments, and I'll be more than happy to respond, and I look forward to starting to make videos again. This is my first video in a long time, and there will be maybe life update videos, because I'm in California now. Anyways, thanks for watching.